Should you get into debt? Now, this is one of the big fears, I think, one of the big financial fears that every person in the Western world and even beyond comes across at some point in their life. Should you get into debt? And, the typical boomer response is that no, you should absolutely never get into debt. It's a bad idea and you'll end up not being able to pay it back. Well, the simple truth there is that if you never get into debt, you're going to be missing out on a lot because debt is actually one of the biggest things that fuels the economy, that makes the economy turn. And the reason is very simple. If you go to your friend Dave and you say to Dave, look, mate, I haven't got 20 quid right now, but I really want a Mackie D's and a Wetherspoons pint. Could I borrow 20 quid from you and I'll pay you back next week? That is debt. And what boomers and people who are afraid of debt don't realise is that when you go to the bank and you get out a loan, you are doing the exact same thing. There's no difference. The only difference is that rather than you going to Dave for 20 quid for a Mackie D's and a pint, you're going to a big bank like HSBC or NatWest or Barclays, and you're asking for, let's say, £20,000 to, go and do whatever you will with that 20,000. Now, obviously, one of the big things that fuels fear with debt is the repayments. If we go back to the Dave, Mackie D's and pint analogy, 1 week later, Dave, you go up to Dave and you say, oh, I'm really sorry, mate. I can't pay you right now. I pinky promise promise that I will pay you next week. And what tends to happen then is it just keeps escalating further and further. He goes back a week later and you're like, oh, sorry, I can't pay it back. I proper promise this time that I'll have the money. And this is where credit scores come into things. If you don't pay back your repayments on whatever kind of debt it is, you will have a low credit score. But what people tend to misunderstand about credit scores is that it's not like a Chinese social credit score. If you have a bad credit score, it's not the case that you're going to go out into society and everyone's going to spit on you, kick you in the balls, throw you to the curb, and just have a general go at you. It's not going to be like that at all. The only downside, really, to having a low credit score is that you won't be able to go and get another loan. That's it, really. You're not going to face any kind of huge problems. It's just the case that you're not going to be able to go back and get another loan. And actually, a neat hack that a lot of people don't realise is that your credit history only goes back as far as about 7 years. So what you can do is every 7 years or so, every 7 to 8 years, you could plan to be a delinquent on your debt just one time every 6 to 7 years and then allow the score to reset. And another tactic that you can do is you can pay credit repair companies. And what credit repair companies do is they basically inundate your creditors with letters and demand that they provide proof, and they effectively annoy the creditor so much that you get that debt wiped off your credit report just to shut the letters up. So that is all well and good. It's all well and good knowing these neat little hacks on how to get debt and not have to pay it back that much. But of course, if you are reliant on a bank for a lot of your banking, for a lot of your accounts, having a bad credit score and having a bad reputation, especially with that bank, could potentially close a lot of doors in that respect. And so it's always something that you want to weigh up in the back of your mind. The main point of this video really is that I want people to get out of this stupid boomer mentality that debt is completely evil and that they should never do it, because boomers are complete hypocrites in this regard. Boomers all the time will go to their mates and be like, oh, can I borrow 50 quid off you? Or can I borrow this, that, and the other? But when it comes to the bank, all of a sudden they become extremely Christian and extremely prudent, and all debt must always be paid back, always, forever. It's a really silly mentality, to be honest. And I think the fear of debt is a big reason why so many people are poor. And once again, like I said before, it's also hypocritical because how many people in the modern world have mortgages? Well, a mortgage is a debt. It's a huge debt. And so a lot of the time, you'll find people wandering around going, oh, you shouldn't have debt, never get into debt. And they've got a fat mortgage that they haven't paid off, and it's eating away at them. And actually, what I tend to see with mortgages are some of the worst kinds of loans you can take out. They have absolutely awful interest rates for you to pay back to the bank. And the bank basically just takes the piss with you with mortgages. And the reason why is because mortgages are so popular. 90% of the population end up getting mortgages. Maybe less so these days because the housing market has doubled in price, at least in the UK, and it's become a thing where most people now just rent because the housing market is absolutely ridiculous. Maybe in a future video I'll get onto the housing market issue. But for now, if we take this back to debt and where we were with mortgages, you'd be so much better to just get out regular loans and find out a certain way of financing them within your own means and within the systems that you've got set up. Maybe you can finance some of those repayments uh, off of the gains you're earning from your investment portfolios or from the returns you're getting from bond accounts and things like that. Now, one thing you usually can't do is take out bank loans to invest into the market. The market's thought about this, and yeah, that is a very easy cheat code to financial success. And so naturally, they can't have an easy cheat code like that lying around. Otherwise, everyone would be a millionaire because all you'd do is you'd go to the bank, get out a small loan of £100,000, to use the Trump analogy, and you would then just invest all of that into the safe investments on the market and promise to pay back the bank in like 10 years. Um, that is possibly something that you could do if you were thinking really long term. If you were thinking, right, well, for the next 10 years, I'm not going to care about these interest payments. They're all just going to go back onto my loan repayments. And then after 10, 15 years, maybe then I could start living off of interest payments alone. And speaking of living off of interest payments, pensions are another thing that I find rather silly. But I also do see the other side of it, and I can see why pensions can sometimes be popular amongst normal people. Uh, I think if you're planning to be a you're planning to raise a family, and maybe one day you want to be a grandparent, then in those situations, I think a pension is probably a good idea because that's really who pensions were designed for. Taking out bank loans, getting into short-term debt on these big loans and things like that. A lot of that is, for weird people who invest and are crazy with their money. Most normal people out there, the only debts they'll have is a mortgage, uh, and maybe some credit card debt. And that brings us nicely onto the topic of credit cards. Another reason people fail miserably in the market, most normal people, is credit cards. And that's not because credit cards are bad, it's because credit cards are so often misused. Credit cards, they're meant to be for debt, as you'd imagine. But if we take it back to that Dave analogy at the beginning, a credit card is just a way of saying to the bank, look, I really want this. I really want this perfume or this shoe or this hat that I've found in the shopping mall. can I have this? You finance it and I'll pay you back later. But where credit cards make all of their money for the bank is on late fees and on interest payments that you have to pay to the bank if you don't pay your credit card bills in full. Now, what you should do if you want to use credit cards properly is you should always pay back your full statement amount on the day that it's due. And the best way you can do this is just setting up auto pay. But the reason why a lot of people can't do that is because they're so poor that they don't have like 500 quid in their checking account to be able to pay off their credit card balance. And so it ends up going on to interest payments. And this is why credit cards are so popular and they're so pushed by the banks, is because, you know, they can make so much riches off of you for being an idiot and buying things that you can't afford. And I think that's really the crux of it, isn't it? Is people buying things that they can't afford. A lot of people out there are degenerates, quite frankly. They'll go to a shopping mall and they'll see, you know, some shoes and they'll go, oh, I want those shoes. Oh, they look so pretty on me. I mean, let's be honest, it's usually women that are doing this. Oh, look at these shoes. They look so pretty. Oh, but they're £200. Oh, I'll just put it on my credit card. I know I'm unemployed and I make like 50 pence a week, but I'll just put it on my credit card. It won't be a problem. And then in 4 months' time, they've got late fees, they've got interest payments, and it's all going down the toilet for them financially. So, to wrap up this ramble about debt, the main takeaway that I want you to take away from this video is that debt is not a great sin. It's not something from the depths of hell. Now, usury is from the depths of hell, but that's something for another time, I think. Just doing regular debt, you know, like going to your mate Dave and asking for 20 quid, or going to Barclays and asking for 5,000 and promising you'll pay it back. There's nothing inherently evil about that. There's nothing inherently wrong about that. That's just how the economy moves. Don't have this perpetual and poor mentality that you should never ever get debt, because it will screw you up financially when you need a fat chunk of change for something very specific.